£2,000, said Sir Aubrey Slade, that you cannot make that one the toast of the season. The Duke of Newlyn did not trouble to look where the man was pointing. He was 3 glasses into a claret he did not want at a ball he had not wished to attend, in a house whose owner despised him and had invited him anyway because a scandalous duke is worth £40 of candles. Which one? The tall creature by the pillar, in the grey. Miss Margaret Wren, Slade's voice carried, as it was meant to. 30 if she is a day. The curate's sister. You know the Chessingtons keep her out of charity, poor thing. She carries their shawls and turns their music and is trotted out at dinner when they are one lady short. She has been on the shelf so long there is dust on her. Laughter all round from good men in good coats. 6 weeks, Newlyn. If she is the toast of this season by midsummer invitations, a proposal, the whole thing, I pay you 2,000. If she is not, you pay me. And it goes in the book at White's tonight, in your own hand, or you're a coward as well as everything else they say of you. Lucian Rathbone, 5th Duke of Newlyn, set down his glass. He was 34 and he had been, by universal agreement, going to the devil for 11 years, since a duel at 19, a scandal at 23, and a career at the tables that had cost him a fortune he had subsequently and irritatingly won back twice over. He was received everywhere and welcomed nowhere. Mothers watched him the way farmers watch weather. He had long ago stopped minding it, and had discovered that if a man is going to be called a wolf whatever he does, there is a certain economy in showing his teeth. He looked at the woman by the pillar. She was tall and thin and dressed in a grey that had been turned at least once. She was holding 2 shawls, a fan that was not hers, and a music book. Her face was long and grave and quite plain in repose, and she had the stillness of a woman who has learned that stillness is the least expensive thing she owns. And she was looking directly back at him from 30 feet away, with an expression of such complete, level, unhurried contempt that Lucian Rathbone felt the back of his neck go hot for the first time in a decade. She had heard every word. He knew it, and she knew he knew it, and she did not look away, and she did not blush, and she did not perform any of the small, piteous flutterings that would have let the room off. She simply looked at him, not at Slade as though she were pricing him, and had found him cheap. Then she turned her head, said something to Lady Chessington, and went out through the card-room door with the shawls over her arm and her back as straight as a guardsman's. Well, said Slade. Put it in the book, said the Duke of Newlyn. He found her on the terrace, because he'd not intend to spend 6 weeks being looked at like that. Miss Wren, Your Grace. She did not curtsy. She was standing at the balustrade with the shawls still over her arm, looking out at the dark garden, and she did not turn her head. You have come to be charming to me. Pray do not. I have had a long evening and there is a great deal of it left. You heard the wager. The whole of the east end of the room heard the wager. Sir Aubrey has a carrying voice. It is his only accomplishment. Now she did turn, her eyes in the lamplight were a clear hard grey. You accepted it. I did. Why? Because, said Lucian, with perfect honesty, I am a scoundrel and it amused me and £2,000 is £2,000. How refreshing, said Miss Margaret Wren, to meet a man who does not trouble to lie about it. She shifted the shawls to the other arm. Very well. Then we shall be businesslike, Your Grace, and you may attend to me, because you are about to be given a piece of good fortune that you have done nothing whatever to deserve. He raised an eyebrow. It was ordinarily an effective eyebrow. You cannot win that wager without me, she said. You are aware of that. You may send me flowers until the greenhouses of England are stripped bare, and it will not answer, because nobody will believe a word of it if I stand about looking like a woman being pitied by a duke. It only answers if I play. If I go where you take me and dance when you ask and hold my chin up while every drawing-room in London laughs behind its fan, and I have not the least reason in the world to do that, she paused. Unless you buy me. Lucian was quiet for a moment. Go on, he said. £2,000 is a great deal of money, said Margaret Wren. It is not, however, my money. It is a wager between 2 gentlemen concerning my person, conducted across a ballroom in my hearing. So here is my wager, and you may take it or leave it, and I shall be equally content. She faced him fully. I will play. I will be your season's toast, and I shall do it a great deal better than you expect, because I have spent 9 years standing in corners watching how it is done, and there is nothing about this circus I do not understand. And when you have won Sir Aubrey's £2,000, you will hand every penny of it to me. And what do I get? You get to win, she said, which is, as I understand it, the only thing you've ever wanted from anything. Somewhere in the ballroom the fiddles began again. Lucian Rathbone stood on a cold terrace and looked at a 30-year-old spinster in a turned grey gown who had, in the space of 90 seconds, taken his own wager away from him, doubled the stakes, and offered him the entire risk. What would you do with £2,000? He asked. It was not a question he had planned to ask. Something crossed her face, quick, and closed at once. There is a cottage at Ashcombe, she said, with a wall and a pear tree, and it is £11 a year, and I have wanted it since I was 22. With £2,000 in the funds I should have £80 a year of my own, forever, and I should never again in my life have to carry another woman's shawl to another woman's ball, or eat a dinner I have been permitted to eat, or say thank you. Her chin came up. That is what I would do with £2,000, your grace. Now you may laugh. Lucian did not laugh. He took the shawls off her arm, she made a small startled sound, and dropped them over the balustrade into the garden, and offered her his arm. Then let us go and be looked at, he said. They were looked at. He danced with her twice that night, twice, which in that world is a sentence, and it went round the room like a lit fuse. He took her in to supper. He stood behind her chair while she talked to a bishop, and the bishop, to Lucian's considerable interest, laughed twice. And the following morning he began the campaign and discovered inside a week that he was not, in fact. She was. No, she said, on the Tuesday, in Lady Chessington's back parlour with the door open for propriety and the household listening at it, not diamonds. It is a vulgar thought, and you should be ashamed. Every woman in London wants diamonds. Every woman in London has diamonds. If you hang £2,000 of stones round the neck of a curate's sister, they will say you have bought me, and they will be right. She was mending a glove as she said it, without looking up, and Lucian was beginning to notice that she was always mending something. You will send me nothing at all. Not a flower, not a note, not a fan. You will simply be seen to want my conversation in daylight, in public, where it cannot be sneered away, and you will look bored with everybody else, which will cost you no effort whatever, and the whole of Mayfair will do our work for us within a fortnight out of sheer curiosity. You are a strategist, Miss Wren. I am a poor relation, your grace, said Margaret. It is the same trade with worse pay. By the end of May it had begun to move, he felt it, the way a gambler feels a table turn. Invitations came to Lady Chessington's house addressed to Miss Wren. The first 3, Lady Chessington opened herself, in front of her, and read aloud with an expression of blank astonishment. And Lucian Rathbone, riding home at 2 in the morning through the empty streets of a city that had been calling him a wolf for 11 years, found himself doing a thing he had never done in his life, which was looking forward to Thursday. Thursday was Lady Bexley's evening party, and the wolves came out for it. They had come to watch, of course. That was the whole entertainment of the thing. A duke with a wager on his hands and a spinster in a turned gown, and 6 weeks in which to fail. Sir Aubrey Slade had taken up a position by the mantel with 3 of his friends, and had already been heard to say twice, at a nicely judged volume, that he had never known £2,000 so easily come by. Lucian arrived late on purpose, and found that he had missed the beginning. Miss Margaret Wren was sitting on a small gilt chair with her hands in her lap, and around her stood the Honourable Mr. Cottrell, Lady Farrow, and Slade himself. And Lady Farrow had just asked her, with the sweetest possible smile, whether she did not find the pace of a London season very fatiguing. At her age. I am 30, said Miss Wren pleasantly, not 90, and I find it far less fatiguing than a winter in Hampshire, where one may go a whole fortnight without hearing an original remark. Miss Wren keeps a sharp tongue, said Slade. I keep a sharp needle, Sir Aubrey. I keep whatever will earn its place. She turned her grey eyes upon him. You are wondering how much of this the Duke has arranged. So is everybody. You may all stop wondering. He arranged the invitation, and nothing else. And if he had arranged my conversation as well, he would have chosen something a great deal duller, because a man wagering upon a woman generally prefers her quiet. The little group went entirely still. So you know of it, said Lady Farrow at last. The wager? I heard it made, said Margaret Wren. I was standing 11 feet away holding your shawl, ma'am, and Sir Aubrey has a carrying voice. I have known since the 6th of May. She smoothed her skirt. I mention it only so that nobody need whisper. It is a great waste of an evening, whispering, when one might be eating Lady Bexley's ices, which are very good." She rose and curtsied and walked away, and left behind her a silence of such quality that Lucian Rathbone, watching from the doorway with a glass in his hand, had to turn round and look at the wallpaper for a moment in order to keep his face in order. He caught her at the supper-room door. "You told them." "I told them the truth, which is quite different and a great deal more disagreeable." She took the glass out of his hand, drank half of it without ceremony, and gave it back. "Do you know what they cannot forgive, your grace? Not that a duke has bet on me. That I knew and did not weep. A woman who weeps may be pitied and put away in a drawer. A woman who knows and does not weep must be reckoned with, and they have no drawer for that at all. You," said Lucian slowly, "are the most dangerous person in this house." "I am the least dangerous person in this house." "I have £11 a year." She was scanning the room as she said it, and he saw the flicker, the automatic 9-year-old flicker, as her eyes found Lady Chessington across the floor, and her hand went out for the shawl folded over the chair back beside her. Lucian got there first. He picked up the shawl, and he did not give it to her, and he did not carry it either. He handed it to a footman. "Take that to Lady Chessington," he said, "with the Duke of Newland's compliments," and he offered Miss Wren his arm in front of the entire supper-room. "Ices," he said. "You said they were very good." Margaret Wren looked at the footman, and at the shawl, and at the arm. She did not say thank you. He understood some weeks later exactly what it had cost her not to, and exactly what it meant that she had managed it. "They are excellent," she said, and took his arm and went in. The trouble, and he identified it precisely, on a Wednesday in the middle of Hookham's circulating library, with a novel he had no intention of reading in his hand, was that she was not plain. She was plain the way a closed door is plain, and she had been closed for 9 years, and she was, for the purposes of a wager, being obliged to open. And what came out was not at all what Sir Aubrey Slade had bought and paid for. She was funny. She was savagely, quietly, unforgivably funny, in a way that never raised its voice, and she had the whole of the Beau Monde catalogued like a naturalist's cabinet. She had read everything. She had read things Lucian had not read and pretended he had, and she caught him at it in the second week and did not expose him, which was somehow worse. She played the pianoforte very badly and the harp well, and refused ever to play the harp, on the grounds that a woman at a harp looks like a woman being decorative and she would rather be shot. She had opinions about the Corn Laws. She had them in the middle of Lady Bexley's route to a cabinet minister, and Lucian stood 4 feet away with a glass in his hand, and watched a man who had ruined 3 careers before breakfast take out his pocketbook and write down what a curate's sister had just said to him. And on the 2nd of June, at Almack's, she was asked to dance by a man who was not the Duke of Newlyn. Lucian stood at the edge of the floor and watched young Fitzalan, 26, 10,000 a year, perfectly amiable, perfectly harmless. Hand Margaret ran through the figures of a country dance, and he discovered, with the coldness of a hand laid on the back of his neck, that he wanted to break the man's arm. It was the first honest emotion he had had in 11 years, and he did not care for it in the least. "You are winning," she said afterwards in the carriage, pulling off her gloves. She was flushed and bright and quite unbearable. "Fitzalan will ask his mother about me on Friday, and his mother will make inquiries, and by the following week I shall have been either approved or destroyed, and either will serve. 2 more weeks, your grace, and Sir Aubrey pays. Do you like him?" "Who?" "Fitzalan." She considered it with maddening fairness. "He is very kind and he dances well, and he has never in his life had one unhappy thought. In 11 years I should have murdered him with a fish knife. But you would take him." Margaret Wren stopped with one glove half off. "Yes," she said. "If he offered." The carriage went along Piccadilly. There was a long, thin silence in it. "I am 30 years old," she said, to the window. "I have £11 a year of my own, and I sleep in a room at the top of another woman's house that has no fire in it, and when my cousin Chessington dies, and he is 68 and gouty, his son does not like me, and there will be nowhere at all, your grace. Do you know what that word is in a woman's mouth? You do not. There is not a man in England who does." She pulled the glove off. Her hands were perfectly steady. "So yes. I would take a kind, foolish, pleasant boy who has never had an unhappy thought, and I would be grateful to him every day of my life, and he would never once know that I was bored, because I have been a poor relation for 9 years, and I am very, very good at not letting people see what I feel. Lucian looked at the side of her face in the passing lamplight. You let me see it, he said. Margaret did not answer that at all. The cottage at Ashcombe went to another tenant on the 10th of June. She learned of it in a letter at breakfast and said nothing about it to anybody, and Lucian only knew because he had, for reasons he declined to examine, written to the land agent himself a fortnight earlier, and had received the man's reply that afternoon. He found her in the garden, sitting on a bench with the letter in her lap and her hands folded on it, looking at a wall. Miss Wren, it is nothing, she said. It is a cottage. There are other cottages. It is a very foolish thing to have set one's heart on £11 a year and a pear tree, and I am too old to be foolish, and I shall not be again. I have bought it, said Lucian. Her head came round very slowly. You have done what? I bought the freehold on the 4th of June. It is not let. The agent lies, because I told him to say so if you inquired, which I ought not to have done, and I am not sorry. He put his hands behind his back, 'cause they wanted to do something else. The deed is in your name. It has been since Tuesday. It has nothing whatever to do with the wager, and you cannot give it back, because I shall simply refuse to receive the papers, and then we shall both look ridiculous. She stood up. The letter fell off her lap into the grass. Why? She said. Because you will not take diamonds. Do not be flippant with me. Her voice was shaking. He had never heard it shake. 9 years, Your Grace. 9 years of being pleasant, and useful, and grateful, and nobody in that time has given me one thing that I did not have to earn twice over. And you have bought me a house and lied to me about it, so that I should not have the humiliation of being given it. Why? Lucian Rathbone, who had faced a pistol at 19 without his pulse changing, found that he could not speak. Say it, she said. Because if you marry Fitzalan, he said, you will do it because you are afraid of nowhere. And I cannot make you love me, Margaret, but by God I can take away the fear, and then whatever you do next you will have done because you chose it. He looked away at the wall at anything. That is all. That is the whole of the reasoning. It seemed a good deal cleverer at 4 o'clock this morning. She crossed the grass and stood in front of him. She was tall. She did not have far to look up. Say the other part, said Margaret. Wren, there is no other part. You said you cannot make me love you. Her eyes were enormous and grey and absolutely without mercy. That is not the sentence of a man who does not care what I do. Say it, Lucian. I have spent 9 years in corners watching people not say things. Do not you do it. And so the 5th Duke of Newlyn, scoundrelist, gambler, wolf, stood in a back garden in June and said, in a voice he did not recognize, I am in love with you. I have been since the terrace, when you dropped me into a wager and made me pay for it. I did not know what it was. I have never had it before. I thought for 3 weeks that I was ill. He drew a breath. I have nothing to offer you that is worth anything. I have a great deal of money, which you do not care for, and a title, which you would find absurd, and a reputation so bad, that if I ask you to marry me tomorrow, every drawing room in London will say that you angled for me from the first hour, and I will not let them say that of you. So you would rather say nothing at all. I would rather, said Lucian, that you had the cottage and the £80 a year and never had to say thank you to anybody again as long as you live, including me. Margaret Wren put both her hands flat against his chest. You are the stupidest clever man I have ever met, she said, and kissed him. They were to be married in September. He had gone to Lord Chessington, who had been so astonished that he had said yes before he could think better of it, and Margaret had gone upstairs and packed her one box and moved. That same week into the house of Lucian's aunt, Lady Ilminster, who was 70 and deaf and read scandalous French novels, and who took to her at once, and there remained only the Midsummer Ball at Bexley House, and Sir Aubrey Slade's £2,000 and the book at White's. Pay him, Margaret said. Pay him the 2,000 yourself and let it be forgotten. Concede? To Slade? Lucian shook his face in her hands, which she had learned to do and which reduced him instantly to a condition his club would not have credited. That book has my name in it, in your hand. Every man in London may walk in off St. James's Street and read what was bet upon me, and by whom and for how much. It will be read in 50 years. I would give anything I have never to have it read at all, but it cannot be unwritten, and so the only thing left is that it should be finished quietly and forgotten, and never spoken of in a public room where I must stand and be looked at. He will not let it be quiet, said Lucian. He is losing, and he knows it, and he has never in his life lost anything gracefully. Then let him lose loudly and pay and be done. Lucian Rathbone kissed his betrothed's forehead and said, as you wish, and rode straight to White's and did not tell her. Bexley House on Midsummer Night held 600 people, and every one of them knew. That was Slade's doing. He had spent a fortnight in the bow window of White's telling the story to anybody who would stand still, the grey spinster, the wager, the great joke of the season. And he had told it best of all, and loudest of all in the last 3 days, when it had become plain to him that he was going to lose. Margaret came down the stairs of Bexley House in a gown of dark green silk that Lady Ilminster had bullied her into, with her head up, and the room, which had been talking, stopped. Lucian felt the change in the air the way one feels a squall. He was halfway across the floor to her when Sir Aubrey Slade stepped up onto the second step of the great staircase, with a glass in his hand and a leather book under his arm, and said, in his beautiful carrying voice, Miss Wren, a moment. Before we go any further tonight, there is a small matter of accounts, and I think you of all people are entitled to hear it. 600 faces turned. I hold in my hand, said Slade, the betting book of White borrowed, quite properly, with the porter's leave, page 109. 6th of May. He opened it. Sir A. Slade wagers His Grace the Duke of Newland £2,000 that His Grace cannot render Miss Margaret Wren, spinster, of no fortune, the toast of the present season by midsummer, signed in the presence of witnesses. Slade. Lucian's voice went across that hall like a whip. Put it down. Signed, said Slade, smiling Newlyn. There was no sound at all in Bexley House. Lucian looked up at the woman on the stairs, and he would remember for the rest of his life exactly how she stood, perfectly still. One hand on the rail, in a green gown she had not wanted, in front of 600 people who had smiled at her for 6 weeks and were now, every one of them, doing sums. And then Margaret Wren came down the last 4 stairs, and walked past Sir Aubrey Slade without any hurry at all, and past Lucian, and past the whole of the season, towards the door. She did not run, she did not weep. She walked out through 600 people with her chin level and her back straight, and she made not one sound, and the only thing that betrayed her at all was that as she passed him, Lucian saw her mending hand, the one that was always mending something, close so hard upon her fan that the sticks of it cracked. Slade began, comfortably, to laugh. Well, Newlyn, he said, I believe I am. He got no further. The Duke of Newlyn took the betting book of White's out of Sir Aubrey Slade's hands. You are quite right, he said. He turned, holding it up, and his voice, the voice that had ordered men off a duelling ground at 19, filled that hall to the cornices. Page 109. My hand, there is not a word of it that is a lie, and I will not stand here and pretend otherwise. 6 weeks ago I sat in a room with that man and I put a wager on a woman's life for £2,000, and I did it because I was a scoundrel and it amused me. He walked to the branch of candles by the stair. I lost, said Lucian Rathbone. 600 people made one sound altogether. I lost the wager, he said, on the 11th of June, in a garden in Hill Street, when I understood that I would have given every acre I own for the right to be looked at kindly by Margaret Wren for 1 hour, and that I had done nothing on this earth to deserve it, and never would. He tore the page out of the book. So the bet is void, and I paid. Slade, my man of business, waited upon yours this morning with £2,000 in the funds, which you have taken, so you may spare us all your indignation. He put the page into the candle flame and held it until it burned down to his fingers, and dropped it on the marble, and set his heel upon it. Newlyn, said Slade, and his voice had changed. You have no right. I have also, said Lucian, spent the last 10 days buying your paper. Sir Aubrey Slade went the colour of wet chalk. £14,300, said the Duke of Newlyn, into a silence you could have stood a spoon in, to Howell, to Marchbanks, to the Jew in Sackville Street, who has been carrying you for 2 years and was extremely glad to be rid of you. I hold every note, and I shall not call them in, Slade. Do not thank me. I have not finished. I shall not call them in. Because if I ruin you tonight, then in 20 years men will say that Newlyn destroyed a man over a woman, and her name will be in it. And it will be told and retold and grow filthier every time, and she has had enough of being a story. He looked at him without any expression whatever. So you will keep your house and your horses. And you will leave this room now, and you will not be received in mine, nor in my aunt's, nor in any house of any man who wishes to be received in mine. And if I ever hear that you have said her name aloud, in any room, in any county, for any reason, I shall have every penny of it out of you in a single morning, and you will end in the Fleet. Good night. Nobody spoke to Sir Aubrey Slade as he went out. Nobody ever really did again. Lucian Rathbone stood alone in the middle of Bexley House, with 600 people staring at him, and found that he did not care about a single one of them, and that he had, in the process of winning, lost the only thing he had ever wanted. He got to the door of the cloakroom before he heard her voice behind him. "You told me to let it be quiet," said Margaret Wren. He turned round. She was standing under the arch with her broken fan in her hand, and her face was terrible, and she had not left. She had got as far as the hall, and she had stopped, and she had heard the whole of it. "I know," he said. "You promised." "I know," he said again. "I lied. I have been lying to you since the 4th of June about a cottage, and I lied to you again on Tuesday. And I shall very probably lie to you about something else before the year is out, and I am not going to stand here and swear that I am a good man, Margaret, because you would know it for nonsense before I finished the sentence." His voice cracked straight down the middle. "But I will not have you walk out of a room, not that room, not while I am living. Let them look at me. They have been looking at me for 11 years, and it has never once mattered. Let them never look at you again." Margaret Wren walked out into the middle of the floor of Bexley House. She stopped beside him in her green gown, with the broken fan, and she turned and faced the entire season, the 600, the fans, the raised brows, the mothers, the men in the doorway who had laughed at the joke in May. "You have all been very kind to me for 6 weeks," she said. Her voice was not loud. It did not have to be. There was not a breath drawn in that hall. 22 of you invited me to your houses. 9 of you asked my opinion of a book. 4 of you told me, kindly and in confidence, that you had always thought me a great deal cleverer than the Chessingtons deserved. She let that sit. And every one of you has known since the 6th of May exactly why I was asked, and not one of you told me. Somewhere near the front, a woman put her hand over her mouth. "I am not angry," said Margaret. "I have carried your shawls for 9 years. I know precisely what you are, and it would be as absurd to be angry with you as with the weather." She took the Duke of Newlin's arm. "But you will forgive me if I decline to be your toast. I never wanted it. I wanted £11 a year and a pear tree." She looked up at Lucian, and her mouth, for the first time in an hour, twitched at the corner. "I have got rather more, and I did not angle for it, and you may say I did, and I find, to my very great surprise, that I do not care in the least." They were married in September, in the small church at Ashcombe, with 11 people present, of whom 4 were farm labourers who had come in out of the rain and stayed. Lady Ilminster wept into a French novel. Lord Chessington gave her away and shook Lucian's hand afterwards and said, gruffly, "You will look after her," and Lucian said, "Yes," and meant it more than he had ever meant anything. And the Duke of Newlyn ceased, over the next several years, to be scandalous, which he complained about bitterly and enjoyed enormously. He sat on committees. He voted twice, in ways that astonished his own party, and both times a cabinet minister was heard to mutter that he could tell where the Duchess had been sitting. He never gambled again, not from virtue, he said, but because he had staked everything he had on one reckless throw in a ballroom in May and had won so far beyond his deserts that to touch a card afterwards would be simple greed. They kept the cottage. It was not grand. It had a wall and a pear tree and £11 a year of ground rent, and every June they went there for a fortnight without a single servant, and Margaret cooked badly and Lucian chopped wood extremely badly, and they were, by the settled opinion of both, more absurdly happy in those 2 weeks than any 2 people in England had a right to be. He asked her once, under the pear tree, why she had stopped in the hall at Bexley House, why she had not simply gone. Margaret Rathbone, Duchess of Newlyn, thought about it for a while, with the sun coming through the leaves. "Because I heard you say that you had lost," she said. "Not lost the wager. Lost. In front of all of them, on purpose, with your own name in your own hand, and you did not spare yourself one word." She reached over and took his hand, that mending hand, which had held a cracked fan and 9 years of other women's shawls, and which had, in the end, chosen. "Nobody had ever taken my side out loud before, Lucian. Not once in 30 years. I found I could not walk away from it. I would do it again tomorrow, he said. I know, said his wife. That is rather the point of view.